Hello, and welcome back to the Young, Wild, and Rich podcast. I am your host, Dayne Camella. Thank you for tuning in yet again. It is episode number 92, and we have a great interview for you in this episode, which is going to be a two-part episode. This is something I'm changing and trying, and the first part is going to be all about the story of the individual I've brought on, and then the second part is where we kind of free flow and talk about different things as well. So this is part one. Who am I interviewing today? I am bringing on a special guest by the name of Hunter Gregg, someone I grew up and went to Chaparral High School with and played football. And why I'm really excited about bringing on Hunter for this interview too is Hunter is the first veteran I have ever interviewed on this podcast. So I'm super excited about it. For those of you who don't know Hunter, a quick intro to him. He was a sergeant scout sniper in charge of his own reconnaissance sniper team in the 82nd Airborne Division. The All-Americans is what they were called at a division called Fort Bragg in North Carolina. So for part one, we are going to talk all about what it's like joining the military and that experience. This is a story for those of you who don't know of Hunter. Ups and downs, challenges after challenges. It's so inspiring to hear this story, guys, and I'm so excited for you to hear Hunter's story and the difficult challenges he went through and kept breaking through to where he is now today too, and the things he's doing, which we'll get into in part two. But this is part one, all about Hunter Gregg's story, a little up before he joined the military and those experiences, recommendations, everything that you might want to know, and just really interesting story. So I'm extremely excited to bring you episode number 92, my interview with Hunter Gregg. Before we jump in, if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. It would mean the world to me. iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are. And if you want to go above and beyond, send us a review. That helps us reach more young professionals around the world just like yourself. And if you ever want to reach out, info@youngwildandrich.com or YWR Podcast on social media. All right, let's jump into my interview with Hunter Gregg. Hunter, welcome to the show.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's Sunday. We caught up about a week or two ago for about an hour. It was a really good conversation, and now we're here and you're on the podcast. So I'm super excited to have you on to share your story, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited, very excited to be able to be on and be able to tell a little bit about some of my experiences.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really cool too, being a Chaparral alum, just like Asa, who I had on a couple weeks ago, playing football, winning state championships, all that stuff. And now, so like 10 years later, we're just in the normal world trying to figure out what we want to do. So super pumped to have you on. Maybe where we can start, which typically we start on all of these interviews, is we're going to talk about your career, and I'm pumped because I've never had anyone on who's been in the military, and I know that's going to be a big part of what we chat about. But before we get into that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience prior to joining the military.
Sure. So basically, I was always involved in athletics. I competed in some mixed martial arts. I'm a former 3-time state, 2-time national, and 1-time world champion. And that kind of, I feel like, really helped me a lot because it taught me discipline, Mm-hmm. And so, going then from into that, then I was playing football, like you mentioned, good old Shaptown. And yeah, so I guess maybe like a lot of people, it was something where when I was going into playing football, I decided in my mind, I think in 6th or 7th grade that I was going to play college football. I was going to figure out a way to get it done. And in all honesty, it was something to where probably the only person that actually believed me was my dad. Right. Yeah, a little undersized. But when I was Shaptown, I actually, in the beginning, prior to our first hitting practice, I was 4th string. And it was, immediately fear setting in, and I'm like, man, it's gonna be really hard to play college football if I can't, play high school. But no, ended up basically after the first hitting practice, got that squared away, became a starter. I was a captain every year I played, except for my junior year, because juniors aren't allowed to be captains on varsity. Mm-hmm. And played with your brother, good old Sean, who was also a captain. Shout out to Sean. But yeah, it was It was good. It was for me, one thing that a lot of people probably didn't know, at that point was, football was very serious to me in the sense of not because it's high school football. It was because I was actually dealing with a lot of stuff at home. I mean, my mom battled with addiction. And so, that was one of the reasons why I was undersized. It was actually, I was just battling through being able to ensure that I could get enough food, at different points. And there were some ups and downs. My dad was a entrepreneur, and so, I'm sure you've probably had people on the podcast, the ups and downs of kind of that journey, doing great. But, what ended up happening was, in my mind, it was something to where, like, every day, I'd go out to the field before school, and I would just imagine, and I did this starting from a freshman, I would just imagine myself, on the field and people yelling and chanting my name and, what it would feel like, to be able to achieve my goals. And, fast forward then to senior year, right before a state championship game, I'm over in the football field house and I get a call, and, it was my first scholarship offer. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, man. I'll be honest. I'm man enough to admit I teared up. I definitely did. Like, it was, yeah.
I mean, that's a life-changing experience, and especially from someone, like you, who you had that goal very early on. And I even remember when because I was a year older, and remember you coming in, and you were a hitter, and like you were talking about that first hitting practice that shows, but you also like dedicated so much of your time to getting bigger. It's like I look at you, I look at Sean, I look at Wes, who Wes is now in the NFL, and he was probably 190 pounds when he went to Chaparral. So to see people who were just so dedicated to getting to be absolutely as good as they could be, and then getting those collegiate opportunities like you did, like Sean did, like Wes did, like many others who were on that team. I thought you guys had such a special team. Your grade, that was a year behind, me and, Chris Fox and some of those other guys who, when we all got to play together and win that state championship, it was an amazing experience. But for you, and some of those things that you shared to me too when we initially had this conversation, a couple weeks back, telling me a little bit about the personal battles that you were going through from the family side, and not being able to even get some food from time to time, just because, again, there was some personal things that were going on with your family. I had no idea, and I think that's hard to share too when you're young and you're growing up in a very affluent high school. Chaparral is a school of a lot of wealth. And it's kind of like something that's expected. My family went through a lot of different things through high school, which a lot of my friends didn't know either. So, just hearing that from you, it's relatable to our situation too, because my dad was an entrepreneur in business and stuff and got crushed in 2008. So, just hearing that and not just thinking I'm the only one who's maybe not doing that well is really good to hear. And then seeing you get to where you get an offer and that goal of playing college football becomes real.
No, totally. I mean, I feel like it's something, especially in life, but especially at that age, to where a lot of people suffer in silence, and, it was something to where I was blessed, and to where I had a lot of people along the way, that helped me, and they didn't realize it. You know what I mean? It was something where, I had friends, that would bring me over to their place. I had other teammates, or even just, the intensity, over, in some ways, I would say even the intensity at Chaparral was even more intense when I did end up playing college football. Just the regiment of it was very, very serious. And that was good. I feel like it's good to be able to, have a goal, every day have a goal. And
right. So, totally. So where did you get the offer from? Or you might have got a couple offers, but where did you decide to go to college?
Yeah, I had a couple, but my first one was from a D1AA. It was South Dakota State. I ended up going on a visit over there, and I was like, oh my goodness. I remember like it was snowing, and over in South Dakota. And I remember like I'm talking to my dad, and we get on the flight after, and I look at him, I was like, Dad, I don't know if I could do it. I'm like this might be too much. But I ended up taking an offer. It was another D1AA school It was Stephen F. Austin State University over in Nacogdoches, Texas. Went over there, and honestly, at that point, it was something to where, because football, football was a means for me to get out of the situation that I was in. And so when I ended up going there, I was doing pretty well. Ended up getting injured, tore my hamstring, which was the same hamstring that I'd actually torn my my junior year of high school, same one. And it didn't end up working out. Ended up getting my scholarship taken, and I had a backup school that had also offered me. It was a Division II school, and it was over closer to where my dad was at that point, which was over in Amarillo, Texas.
Okay.
And so went out there and built my way back up. Got all the way up to 240. You know what I mean? Just massive. Yeah, like not fat. Like I was just big, and and I thought like, am I doing this for me? Like is it really worth it? And I decided, I was like, I'm not. And so something that I'd always had in the back of my mind. So my first name is Francis. My full name's Francis Hunter Gregg. I go by my middle name, Hunter, obviously. And so that's actually after my grandfather, who was Colonel Francis Herbert Gregg. And he helped liberate Dachau in World War II. He was in Korea. He oversaw the aerial surveillance school during the Vietnam War. My father served. Basically, almost every man in my family served. And so it was always something in the back of my mind. And, I looked into it, went over to a recruiter, and saw that they had something. It was called an 18 X-ray contract. It was a special forces recruit contract. So it was a newer program to where you could go in, go through some of the training, and be able to get on to Operational Detachment Alpha, get on an ODA, be a Green Beret. And so I thought, man, maybe I'm just crazy enough like I might be able to do this, and first day, 240 pound, big guy. My dad says, okay, well, just the normal PT test. You're gonna 2 mile run, 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups. And I remember he goes out, drives away 1 mile. I run a quarter mile, stop, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do. I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I could handle this. And it just, at that point, I just became, became an animal in my own right. It just from fear,
Yeah.
from not wanting to let, myself down, anyone else down, and I stopped lifting weights. I just ran, did push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and went from 240 down to 185.
Wow.
Yeah, and ended up running 10:30 2 mile.
Okay, geez. And then how long did it take you to get down? I'm just curious because that's such a big amount of weight. How long did it take you to drop from 240 to 180?
Oh man, probably I want to say like 3 months, 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, right around there.
And then once you got down to that weight, that's when you kind of went in to do that test you were talking about.
Yeah, so that was all preparation. I had sworn in at that point, and then you get a date to then ship out to basic training. And so, that was all in preparation prior to then going into the military. And then, you go, for me, the way that it works with the contract is you go in and you go to basic training, and then you go into, because you get your base training is being an infantryman. So you have basic training, and normally there's something called AIT, which is advanced, what is it? Basically, it's like your advanced training then for your military occupational specialty.
Okay.
Well, it's combined. So I went to one station unit training, which is basically just like a really long basic training. Is like what it is, which sucked. I have some buddies now that are drill sergeants over there, so shout out Rojas, Asa. But so the thing with basic training is, at least for me at that point, being that I was an athlete, like it wasn't that physically demanding for me,
Okay. Yeah.
But it's very stressful, It's like whenever I was playing college football, you know, it was something to where you're kind of like a prized horse. You know, well, when you go in and you initially go into the military, you know, for me, I went from a prized horse, you know, to like a whipping mule, you know, just like just another number, you know.
Right.
And yeah, but it was good. I mean, I needed it, you know, to humble me a little bit. And yeah, went there. It was winter time. I mean, you know, sucked. You know, I hate the cold. And so then after you pass that, you know, then I went on to something called Airborne School.
Okay.
So what Airborne School is basically they teach you how to jump out of airplanes. That's what it is. And you have to have a certain PT test and, you know, different things to get into Airborne School. And then they'll have a couple of like sink or swim. So everything in the military is pass or fail. And that may be something very intensive. Mm-hmm. You know, that might be a 20-mile run, you know, or that may be, you know, did you, you know, pack your bag in a certain way? And, you know, what it does is basically it creates, and if there's any small mistake, especially in basic training, but even after that, you get destroyed. You know, like you're going to get screamed at. You know, you may get smoked is what it's called, you know, make you do some push-ups and et cetera. And the reason why is because, especially someone in, like, where I was at in the combat arms, those little things may be life or death. And they just want to then continually put that into your mind. You know, like if you show up late, well, that may mean that we have to start our mission late, which then means that then someone may die. You know, it's like
the discipline component of it is like everything, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's I mean, it's just very, very intense, and it's hard to really like get that across to where everything is just very serious for obvious reasons, you know. It is, you know, it is life or death potentially. So
did you think it was easier for you to adapt to that type of lifestyle where it's like every little thing needed to be to a certain standard? Because again, it's not like football where someone might fumble the ball and the other team picks it up and, you know, that's on you and you could lose that game, but it's like you could lose someone's life. Like, was it easier for you to adapt to that because of the discipline that football had, which again was a different type of discipline, but I feel like it still kind of rolls over to the military quite well?
Yeah, I would say what football really helped me with was being able to learn how to be on a team. You know, because, you know, one of the things about the military is like you have people, like I serve with people from, you know, people from Puerto Rico, people from Guam, people from New York City, California, you know, podunk nowhere. One guy from China, you know, who was doing it to be able to get his citizenship. And, you know, so like you're with all different types of people. And, you know, I'd say with football, it helps you because similar to the military, not to the same level, but in the same kind of like idea of mutual suffering. You know, it's like you become really close to the guys, you know, that you're doing wind sprints with and waking up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, you know.
Right.
Yeah, because it's the mutual suffering, because you really learn who people are, you know, like you learn who the guy who doesn't go to the line, you know what I mean, in the wind sprints. Like, you know, in the military, it's like you know, all of a sudden it's really easy to kind of mind your P's and Q's until all of a sudden now you're cold and you're hungry, you know, and you're wet, you know, and you're just like you really find out who people are.
So having that diversity of people that you were able to bond with and, you know, again, like you said, suffer together with, did you notice any personality traits or similar types of people that were in this particular group that you were, you know, going up with and getting trained up with? Was there a similar mindset, or would you say it was just across the board, like all different types of people Like, because I feel like the military attracts certain people. Some people feel called to go to the military. Other people, it's from family similar to you, but you also had that in the back of your mind. Other people maybe think it's, like you said, a way to get citizenship, or they don't know what else to do with their life and they want to serve their country. Did you see any similarities from the people that you were training and working with in your time there?
Well, I would say, I would say one of the similarities would probably be that basically everyone was there to then either be a part of a group to then do something bigger than themselves, more the people that, let's say, after 9/11, or, maybe they had the relative that did it, or they're just very extra patriotic, like there's that, or even people that, like, there were people there, and not as many in the combat arms, but in the support jobs, to where they were there to get maybe they came from, Compton, and they were there, and now this will change their life. Like, now they're gonna have the GI Bill, and so it's like it's all searching after something higher than themselves, and and I will say, like, so after, to then bring in with that question, after airborne school, I went to something called Special Operations Prep Course, which was then in preparation, then go to Special Forces Assessment Selection. So, like, once you get to then this point, now it's all of the other people that either they're coming from different parts of other special operations units, like the Ranger Regiment. I know they've opened it up now to, because I have a buddy right now going through the course, to where they've opened it up to the Marines, certain parts of the Marines, and even, the Navy. And when you're there, for one, I was 20 years old when I was going through this. I was definitely the youngest guy. Most of them were probably around 27 to 30. And a lot of them, because, here's the thing, like, if you're going to go into combat arms, it takes a pretty unique person, especially something like the infantry, to where your job is to either, go attack the enemy, go kill the enemy, or to protect, something from being attacked, and so it takes a very interesting, person to be like, I want to do that, or even more than for the special operations side, to say, not only do I want to do that, but I can do that.
Right.
I mean, because it's like a lot of the people there, I mean, so diverse. Like, some of the guys in the course, they were, they had their doctorate. One guy was like a physical therapist. Another one, was came from the tech world. Actually had like a lot of money, and he just wasn't happy with what he was doing, and he just said, what, I'm going to do this.
Wow.
And like, another guy, ran the mile over at Oregon. It's just, and so, and most of them had degrees already, at least one. Here I am. I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm like, man, like, these guys are, amazing. Like, I'm like, what about me? And I was like, and I just used that as fuel, though. I was just like, okay, then I'm going to, outthink them. I'm going to outwork them. Whatever I can possibly do, to be able to then, not even just for like the physical aspect of it, just like mentally, just to feel like secure, in yourself. And it's all leading up, all this is then leading up then to go to Special Forces Assessment Selection. Well, if anyone has ever then seen, this is what I had saw before I had signed up, but then was kind of like the final thing that then I decided I wanted to go this route, which was, it's called 2 Weeks in Hell. You can look it up on YouTube, and it'll show you what SFAS is. Well, it's funny, they actually end it with Well, now they're adding an extra week. Well, when I was there with the extra week. It's 3 weeks in hell now. So
Jeez.
they actually, the joke is, the SFAS, everything's acronyms. Well, School for Advanced Suffering is what then people would say. So like, it's basically, everything ranging. The first week is, to give you an idea, so like 400 people will then usually be a part of a class. Like
Okay.
70 of them won't even show up. They'll just be like, okay, well, I'm not doing this. And then, by the first week, you're going to get rid of another 100.
Jeez.
And in the first week is you have basically like IQ test, personality exam. Like I had one of the Green Berets that was cadre prior to the course. I was asking him about all these things, and he was like, and I was like, so what are they looking for? He's like, they're looking for someone that's, basically crazy enough to be able to try to do something, that very well may cause them to die, but not so crazy that then they're not able to then be a part of the team and, put other people, ahead of themselves if need be. And so anyway, yeah, first week, it's, and the way that they do it is you have your exams, all these different types of evaluations, and then they'll just wake you up at a random hour, and they'll be like, okay, get this gear, go here, and then you'll do a series of runs and rucks. You'll do one each day, but it's an unknown distance. So, and this is a total like mind death because, it's not like you just be like, well, I just need to make it this far, whatever. It's like, no, they want to see how you're going to react. You know what I mean? What pace will you go? Are you going to just risk it all, and just give it all in 2 miles, or,
Right.
are you going to pace yourself? And so anyway, that's the first week. And after every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, they hold a formation, and everyone's in the formation, and they call out numbers, and they'll separate the group, and you don't know if you're in the group that made it or doesn't make it each day. And then they tell, okay, group 2, pack up your bags, you're done, and they leave.
Wow.
And it's just like that every single day. Then the second week, land navigation, so they just throw you out there, and you have a ruck, of 55-pound dry ruck, and they throw it in the middle of the forest, and it's called the Star Course, and it's literally with like a map and compass. They're throwing you out there, and for me, this was really hard because I was not, from like Podunk somewhere, like I hadn't spent time, out in the forest, and so, but I figured it out. I ended up making it. By my last point, I made it by like literally 10 seconds. Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. And then whenever I showed them, they said, this is wrong. This is the wrong point. Well, someone had mixed up like with the map. So then I was like the stress of like, oh my God. And made it through. And then the last week is team week, which is then what they do is they'll like, this is how they started it for us. They're literally, okay, we were pushing really hard, and this is in the middle of the summer in North Carolina, by the way. And they're like, we're pushing really hard, so, we're going to give you a little extra sleep. Well, I was like, okay, so we're going to get no sleep, realizing that. And they have, of course, no sleep. They wake us up. We do a 6-mile movement with these rucksacks on just to get to the starting point of team week, which is literally picking up really heavy, like 100-pound plus, ammo holders. You'll have like 5 poles with like 2 wheels, and they'll be like, okay, you have 3 minutes to create an apparatus to carry this 500-pound, thing, and and it's just like that, just over and over and over again. And you have psychologists watching you the whole time, and they're taking notes because, one of the things that happens is, and you could see this sometimes in football too, but like when people get under extreme stress, like when you're, sleep deprived, you're hungry, you wanted to stop, you know what I mean? Like day one, you know what I mean? Now we're day, 18, so, and everyone's, you're creating this piece of crap apparatus, you know what I mean? Like throwing a wheel on a random pipe, you know what I mean? That doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they'll just be like, you'll get to a point and they'll just like take away a wheel. They'll be like, okay, figure it out. And the whole point is to just make you get to that point and see who breaks. And, a lot of people break, and they give up, or the psychologists, they'll start yelling at people. The psychologists will just be sitting there taking notes, just shaking their head. And anyway, so sum it up, all that ends up happening. Then you have a final formation. They separate us into 4 groups, and long story short, I made it. I got selected. And so if I were to guess the number of people, maybe I want to say probably like 30 people, maybe a little bit less.
Out of the 400 that initially like sign up?
Yeah.
Jeez, that's crazy. I'm curious too, because that's part of the process to getting in the special forces. You have to go through these 3 weeks of hell, right?
Exactly.
And you have to pass. You have to get through. But can you do it multiple times? Like if you don't pass your first time?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So what ends up happening is then, depending upon why they cut you, and they don't tell you why, then they'll give you one of 3 things. Either they'll give you a 1-year return, so you come back in a year, a 2-year return, or a never to return. And it really just kind of depends on like, did you, like, let's say if I didn't make the land nav, well, they may be like, all right, well, he's 20, you know what I mean, he's young, maybe come back in a year or something, but if you're the guy that's freaking out, getting into a near fist fight, you know what I mean, over nothing, really, well, they don't want people like that, like you're done. Or if they find out you're a psychopath or something, which does happen. And so, yeah.
And then were you one of the younger people, or maybe the youngest person in that group of 30 that were able to make it? Or did you have another like member who was pretty close to your age too?
I had two that were older than I were, but they were pretty close to my age. And yeah, but it was, the majority were definitely quite a bit older. And so yeah, we were kind of buddies, through it. And so anyway, after that, then depending on what job, because there's now different jobs that then you go to. Mine, I got selected to then go to the Special Operations Combat Medic course. And it's basically like, by the time you get done with it, you're essentially a qualified physician assistant. So like, you're honestly with probably even some extra stuff on top of that. And when you're there with it's all the medics for special operations in all the military. So it's like Navy SEALs, Marine Force Recon, Green Beret, Special Forces. Like I was, trying to be Ranger Regiment, all of them in there. And it's very, very, very intensive. It's what they say day one is that basically that this is the hardest course in the military, not necessarily from the physical part, but the mental part. It is incredibly, like day one, to give you an idea, we end up doing a full PT test, they start yelling at us, we end up running 5 miles after the PT test, and then we did 500 burpees in cadence.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was ruined. I was completely ruined. And then after that, then you sit down in the classroom. Like literally, it's like that's all prior to, 7 a.m.
Jeez.
And so then the first day we went through 15 chapters. It is incredibly, incredibly intensive. And so there's like the pass rate for that is way smaller like even then selection. I mean, it's so small, but some people do it, and I had, you know, a couple of my. I'll be honest. I got sent to a board during a pharmacology test. I missed it by one, and normally, like they'll kind of look at it and they'll be like, all right, well, you know, we'll let you redo that, you know, but then if you fail it again or something, you know, then you're done. Well, like they brought me to a board. They look at, they're like, what? Like 20? You know what I mean? Like, what are you even doing here? Like, how did you even make it here? Because normally, I mean, because you have to think, if you're the medic on the team, like that's a very, you know, intense job, especially with a lot of these ODAs. They're out and there's not a hospital. There is no other medical professionals, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Right.
And so like it's a very intense job. And they looked at it and they were like, look, okay, you're too young. Go get some time. You know what I mean? In the big army is what they call it. Go get some time over there. Get a deployment under your belt. Ranger school. Come back. And so I'm pretty butthurt, you know, at that point. But they give me a year, and so now I get sent over to the 82nd Airborne Division, which is a very, very proud division. A lot of the interesting things through history of World War II. So you're a paratrooper, which basically means that using World War II as the example, have you ever seen, you know, like with like Band of Brothers? Have you ever seen that? Or, you know, like with D-Day, it's where basically you jump out of an airplane or a helicopter behind enemy lines. Mm-hmm. That's the job. And so I get sent over to the 82nd Airborne Division, and now they throw me on the machine gun, you know, because I've been lifting weights, you know, again, and like trying to get big, and of course, and it's very what's the word I'm looking for? It's a culture shock in some ways. But immediately it was something to where I figured out, like, I'm going to do, you know, my absolute best. Like, I'm just going to figure out this whole being a soldier thing, you know, because up until that point, with the exception of basic, you know, OSIT, you know, you haven't really learned that much about being a soldier. They've been more trying to learn about who you are, kind of like internally. And one day when I first get to the 82nd, we're there, and they say, we're going to go on a 20-mile run next Friday. And I was like, thinking to myself, like, they're just messing with me. You know, like, because I was a private, which is like low man on the totem pole. You know, I'm like, yeah, sure, mess with the new guy. Yeah, we're going to go on a 20-mile run. Well, sure enough, I'm on this run, you know, and it's like, I'll be honest, I didn't even completely believe it until I hit the 10-mile marker and they said, all right, turn around, go back. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, what, like, this is insane. But, got through it, and yeah. And, so, yeah.
So in that airborne, the 82nd Airborne team, how long were you on that team for?
So I was in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was there for, I would say, close to 3-4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, that being such a big part of your experience in the military, what would you say was the most challenging part about it? And then what would you say was like the best part about that experience? I'm just curious because, again, you spent a lot of time in that group, and I'm sure you learned a lot, and I'm sure there was a ton of challenges, but also, you know, good things that came from it too.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the best things was, you know, as cheesy as it may sound, you know, the people that I met, like, just truly amazing people. Not to say that everyone was, you know, sure, like, you know, but definitely some of the guys that I met, because when I was in, no women were allowed in the infantry. That has since changed now that I've been out. But So it's all guys, and it's total, it's all locker room talk, and it's very, it's just,
Right.
you wake up early and, you're doing everything together all the time. And, I met some really, really good people, some great leaders that taught me so much. I've had the blessing of, being able to, I became oh, I'll get to that. But basically, yeah, just some really great people. As far as some difficult things, well, so I actually, when I was there, I saw, I don't know what this says about me, but kind of like with the 2 weeks in hell, I saw a bunch of people just getting absolutely dominated, getting smoked, doing bear crawls and all this stuff. And I thought, and they were the scouts, which is like a specific part of the battalion that I'm at. And I see them, and I'm like, man, and they have snipers, they have recon teams, and I saw American Sniper, and I thought, man, like, I want to do that, like that is cool, like that is super cool. I want to be a sniper. And but the funny thing is back when I was in basic training, I barely, like, you have to qualify, and the military buddies are going to laugh at me. Most of them don't know this, but it was something to where when I was in basic training, you have to hit like 15 or 16 to qualify out of 40. I hit 16. Like I barely made it. Like I was just overthinking it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I am. Yeah, really cool if you're in good shape, but like if you can't shoot, like you're gonna die, man. Like you need to figure this out. And so luckily, when I was in the 82nd, I had a guy prior to scouts that taught me how to shoot. It was Sergeant Woody. But anyway, so I go to now another selection. I go to the scout selection, and it's not as crazy as SFAS, but it's definitely intensive. The same kind of idea, some land nav, which is really important when you're in a reconnaissance team, because the maximum size reconnaissance team is five men.
Okay.
Well, then the maximum size sniper team is 3 men. So, and with that, then, the reconnaissance side of the job is, you're either taking pictures or you're calling in air support, and, you have to be able to do that, again, behind enemy lines and ahead of the larger unit. So there's a high risk associated with that, which is why there's the extra selection process.
Right.
And sniper, I feel like most people probably know what a sniper does. Long range shooting, and you have to be able to do the reconnaissance side and do the sniper, shooting side. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I go through that selection, get selected to be on the sniper teams, and now I'm a sniper. And now I'm going through all of that training. It's a lot of everything from like stalking in a ghillie suit to, shooting, obviously constantly shooting, and then doing reconnaissance missions and all these different things. And when I was there, I still had that in the back of my mind that I was going to go back, to the Q course, is what it's called, qualification course. I was going to go back to the Q course.
Okay.
And I ended up going to this pre-ranger course, and it was I came back early from my Christmas leave, and come back early to go to this training. And it's basically, it's preparation for ranger school, and it's basically, it's almost like it's supposed to be a leadership course, but it's basically we're just going to run you into the ground, and we're going to find out who survives. And so it's food deprivation, sleep deprivation, getting screamed at constantly. It's very, very intensive. When I was there, I'm going through this course, and it's freezing cold, which like I've said, I absolutely hate. And I'm lactose intolerant. And so, with this food, like either eating MREs sometimes, or every now and again, then they'll give you some warm food. And, well, it's our time to get some more food because the next day we're going to be doing a 12-mile ruck march. And it's timed. And so when we go, it's all macaroni and cheese. And I tell the instructor, it's called cadre, or in that it would be the RI in that case, ranger instructor. I'm like, Sergeant, I'm lactose intolerant. I can't eat this. And he says, I don't care. Wow. Either you eat it or you don't. Like, I don't care. And so I ate it. And the whole next day I'm throwing up, horrible stomach issues, going to the bathroom. And we go out there to start this ruck, and we were supposed to have like 2 or 3 hours sleep prior to it. I got none of it, no sleep. And we go into it, and you have 2 courts, 2 1-quart canteens, then you have a Camelback. Well, with the Camelback, then you go to blow out the Camelback to get the ice out of it. Mine was completely frozen. Oh. And so I'm like, okay, here we go. I guess we're going to make this work. And long story short, I'm moving through, make it, and hypothermia is setting in. And at the time, I'm not realizing this. I'm like, I just need to finish. And still making time and make it to the 11-mile marker. And at this point, I'm starting to, like, fall on my face. You know what I mean? Like, I'm losing coordination. It's like I'm in a dream. And I end up finally, I'm just barely making time. I was like, you have 1 more mile, you could do it. And next thing I know, I wake up and I'm face first in the ground. I'd passed out. And they're calling for the medics. The medics come, they cut off my boots, they cut off all my clothes, and they roll me over and they show a thermometer in my butt. And at this point, I couldn't even lift my head up. That's how bad it was. And they shove it in my butt, and they pull it out, and they're like, there's no way his core body temp is that low. So they do it again. And I'm just laying there like, oh my God, this is so horrible. And my core body temp had dropped to 88. What? And so for those that don't know, 98 is where you want to be. And I went from jackhammering to not shivering to where I was about to go into shock. So they were the medic was literally slapping me at different points. And they end up rushing me to the hospital, get me there, and, all the people around me, they're like, I think he has frostbite, here and this and that. And I'm naked in front of like these 15 people, all these nurses and doctors and stuff. And something funny was that then, I like lean over to the doctor. I was like, Doc, can you cover my dick? You know what I mean? Because I'm like there, it's
all these people in front of you. It's like you're already in this like state of like barely.
And it's cold. You know what I mean? I have hypothermia. Like that's not how I'm going out. Like I don't want to be remembered as that guy. And so anyway, I end up getting brought in, and they give me 2 IV bags, and they say if you don't pee after this IV bag, then you have kidney failure. And so luckily I did, and when I did, it looked like Coke. It was blood in my urine, and I'd gotten something called rhabdomyolysis, which is basically when your body gets shocked, it starts eating your muscle tissue. Then for energy, well, you get a lot of things then in your stream, which then could cause kidney failure. Like creatine kinase and all these different things. And so, anyway, go through that, make it through this recovery process, and it was 2 or 3 months, and they were literally like having to stage people at the gym to ensure I wouldn't go to the gym, because the thing is, if you work out on this, then what'll happen is then the rhabdo will happen again, and you could die.
So this was 2 to 3 months of recovering from this event when you initially had to get taken to the hospital.
Correct. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was very, very intense.
I mean, but it also sounded like it was a buildup of a lot of different things, not only just being cold, but you weren't even able to like keep down the food that they had given you because they didn't give you anything else.
Right.
And you hadn't slept.
Exactly. I mean, and all of those factors play into it, just completely to shock your body. And so all those factors played into it, and, it sucked, but in a strange way, something positive that came from that was whenever that happened, and I'm laying there, you finally get some time alone, and your body is just in so much pain, like physical pain after all of that. And I had this strange moment of reflection, and I thought, like, I finally did it. Like, I pushed myself to that ultimate point. Like, my mind was stronger than my body. Like, because I didn't give up. It was like, but it happened, and it felt, it was kind of an empowering thing, in a strange way. And so yeah, that was a positive from it. But a negative was then after I recovered, then I applied to go back to the Q course. Well, they look at it and they say, "Oh, rhabdomyolysis, nope, you can never come back."
Wow.
Because once you get it one time, you're more likely to get it again.
Okay.
And yeah, so that that was tough. Like, honestly, it was something to where it was like I sat there for a while, and I was a little kind of sad, and then finally I just turned around. I was like, you know what, man, like what are you just gonna, like, you gonna cry about it? You know what I mean? Like, come on, like, do something. Like, go make the best of this. Like, do your absolute best. And so then I'm going, and had one more crazy thing to where, long story short, I'm jumping out of an airplane. It was raining, and my chute didn't open. So like, I pulled my reserve, and obviously it opened. I'm here, and I got knocked out, had like a stutter for like a week. I mean, but it was, rather than that, I was good. And like, we do this very, very intensive train up to then prepare, because I was preparing to deploy to Iraq. And so it's a very, very intensive, long, just like constant grind, to get you, because you have to qualify to like the Army standard. Like, your unit has to qualify to then be able to be deployed. And so, and when I was going to Iraq, it was something to where, that was back, with anyone that keeps track of any of this, it was back when ISIS was in Iraq, and specifically they had a stronghold in a place called Mosul, like an old town. And so, like, we do this long train up, and then all of a sudden it's, oh yeah, and within that period when I was in the 82nd, of course, I have to mention this, and love to, I met my wife, who's now my wife. And she stuck through me. I mean, through the rhabdo, through the airplane, jumping out of the airplane, all of that, and then going into, this deployment to Iraq. I mean, she's a total trooper. She's actually getting her second degree now. She's in nursing school over at Texas A&M, and just total trooper. And so we go to Iraq, and it's a deployment. I mean, it's one of those things to where, like, it's everything becomes very, very real, at that point. Like I remember the first moment. So you go to Kuwait, and then from there, then you stage, and then you get sent on a helicopter plane into Baghdad, and then you have a helicopter for us that was bringing us into a different part of the city. And I remember, and I even have a picture of it that my buddy took. And I'm sitting there, and I'm holding my sniper rifle. I have all my ammunition. I have everything, and it was just something that I remember that my dad had said whenever he had deployed to Iraq also, back during Desert Storm. He said, just know in your mind, just no matter what, basically it's like the easiest way to describe it for me, the feeling that I had was like anyone that's seen Hunger Games, and it's like whenever then she's preparing the first one, she's preparing to then go into the arena.
Right.
It's like, it's that kind of feeling to where you're like, all right, well, whatever's on the other side of this, you know what I mean? We're going to figure it out. Like we're gonna get through it. Like we will get through it, and that's the key. Also, because you're with other people, and so, yeah, I got through it. I mean, did a couple of cool things while I was over there, two that probably people wouldn't think of like whenever they think about deployments, well, one that they would. I was actually a part of. This is gonna sound a lot cooler than it really was, but I helped then. I was the outer cordon security for Mattis when he came into Iraq. Yeah, so that was cool. And then I also won an international sniper competition. I got sent over to a different part of Iraq and competed with the guy now, Warner. He's over at Jungle right now. So shout out to Austin. But we ended up winning this international sniper comp, which was cool. And then, there's a lot of other things, too that happened. But it was, and it's something to where, like, there was a man, Lieutenant Westonley, that did, he did die. And he was a really good guy. I did some training with him prior to deployment. And basically what had happened was they were out clearing out a path then for the Iraqi tank regiment to move into Mosul to take over, ISIS' stronghold there. And he just stepped out of a Humvee, stepped on a landmine, and blew his arms and his legs off. And he survived for another 8 hours when they were flying him to Germany because that's the closest place to be able to do like intensive surgeries like that, and he died on the way. But and that's the thing, like I'm not a hero, you know what I mean? But I did serve with heroes, and one of those heroes was him. And obviously, he paid the ultimate price, but not just that. It was something to where he was legitimately a very, very good man, just a great man. And so, it's unfortunate, that happened, but, it did. And, so another thing that happened when I was there, I'd won a powerlifting competition prior to going to Iraq. And so at one point then I was going to then back up my, I had to, get a back-to-back, championship. And so there was an area to where then they set up an area to where then you could do it. And when I was doing it, I was at the bottom of my squat. And this is like 3 months in to my 9-month deployment. When I squatted, my leg gave out. And I was excruciating pain. But I decided that I wasn't going to leave. You know what I mean? Like, they were going to have to make me leave. Like, I wasn't going to leave my guys.
Right.
That wasn't even an option. So, like, I'd get some injections, and, I'm trying to, as a sniper also, like, you're trying not to limp. You're trying not to, or just anyone, really. I mean, like, you're not wanting to show weakness, because then you're at a higher likelihood of someone, trying to take advantage of that. And so, I make it through, though, make it through the deployment, and, I come back a week early. My dad had a heart attack. He's okay now, but that was a crazy thing. And, one of the great leaders, probably my favorite leader that I had, was First Sergeant Hall. And this shows you, what a real leader, would do, to where the Sergeant Major told me that he wasn't going to send me back a week early, even though obviously the thing with my dad. And he put his neck out on the line. And I don't know what he did exactly, but he said, he just basically, I remember he looked at me and he shook my hand and, kind of like patted me on the head, and he's like, all right. He would jokingly call me Gregory. He'd be like, all right, Gregory. He's like very serious, like, go to your dad. Don't worry about everything here. We'll be okay. Go home. And next thing I know, I'm on a helicopter, plane lot, then a C-130 plane ride, and then I'm, now I'm in Kuwait, and then I'm going through a civilian airport in Kuwait. I end up getting stopped. Like, the people that brought me there left. I get stopped. I had a stray round that was in one of my bags. Now I'm on a list somewhere, over in the Middle East, and, go through Qatar and all this stuff, get back. Luckily my dad made it. And then, a week after that, I'm getting married. And just prior to the marriage, I'd found out I finally got my hip looked at. Well, it turns out that I had a tumor, a giant cell tumor that had ate through my femur. I only had a centimeter left of my femur, and when I was squatting, what had happened was like actually fractured my femur. And so, yeah, it was,
You stayed and did all that stuff with that going on, and you didn't really know, right? Like what actually had happened, but you just knew you were in a lot of pain.
Yeah, I had no idea what it could be. Yeah, I just knew it definitely hurt. And so, yeah, thank God didn't fracture all the way through. That could have been bad for a number of reasons. But yeah, so I get married, then literally we leave, then the wedding, then to fly back to North Carolina. Now I'm getting surgery. I end up getting a partial. It's a partial hip replacement, but it's really kind of more of a femur replacement. Like now I have a plate with 6 screws and a rod and cement in there, and they're telling me, and we're there over Christmas, and I'm like, they're telling me like, hey man, like you might not be able to, walk properly, like you might not be able to run again, like you're done, like you're done, and this may come back, and all these things, and my wife, God bless her, being the trooper, again, we're in the hospital, and that's when she actually decided she wanted to be a nurse, when she was, there, and not, it really shows how great of a person she is. I mean, because it was, it was not good, not good at all. And yeah, she decided to do that, and then ended up going through the long recovery process of that. But I will say, the first moment that I was able to stand, I knew I was going to be okay. Like I
love that, man.
Yeah, it was like they don't, they don't know, maybe that little bit of arrogance to where like they don't know who I am. I'll figure out a way.
And that is going to conclude part 1 of my conversation with Hunter Gregg. If you're curious about part 2, that is going to be coming out very soon. I'll keep you guys up to date. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen in. Connect with us on YWR Podcast, Instagram, social media, all that good stuff. If you ever want to connect, you ever want to come on the podcast, you have a guest or anything like that, send me an email, info@youngwildandrich.com. Thank you so much, guys. If you want to get in touch with Hunter, you know where to, and I will see you in the next episode. Cheers.